coming to you from just outside the church doors, about to brave the ashes and the inevitable guilt. Today we're diving into the meaning of Lent. What it's really meant to do for us. We'll weigh in on the best and most questionable things to give up. And finally, we'll share some practical tips for what to do when your Lenten commitments don't exactly go as planned. Grab your ashes, grab your coffee. This is the All In Podcast.
Bada bing, bada boom. Bing, bada bing, bada bing, bada boom. Bada bing, bada boom.
Jose, Clayton, what are you wearing?
What do you mean?
It's very colorful.
This is just my normal.
Yeah, it's just kind
It's
of
got crawfish on it.
This is just my normal shirt.
Normal everyday wear.
No, so this is a rugby shirt. So rugby's a sport. I'm not sure if you're familiar.
Yeah. No, I played for 6 weeks in high school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I did.
More than I did. So this is a Mardi Gras shirt.
Okay.
It's just what you wear during Mardi Gras in New Orleans and in Louisiana. Like you go down to New Orleans for Mardi Gras, everyone has there's 5 designs. There's this one, there's a white one with 3 lines. There's just 5 designs, and you can find every single person down there from Friday to Tuesday wearing one of these shirts. Wow. And then there's a women's version of it, which is just this, but longer. So it's a dress. It's a rugby dress.
Uh-huh.
And so it's 90% of people
and they wear that?
dress. Yeah. Just for Mardi Gras.
Does it have a collar?
Now, the women don't wear as much as the men do. But yeah, it's 90% of guys you see at parades are wearing these shirts.
The rugby style shirts.
It's like a thing, like the rugby Mardi Gras shirts from Paris.
What's the deal with the rugby? Is it that's just the way it's been?
Yeah, I couldn't tell you. it's right before the
That's
parade.
How a lot
it's
of
like
things are in
Thanksgiving,
Louisiana.
where you play football with your family. At Mardi Gras, you should play rugby outside.
So, what explain Mardi Gras to those who are not aware, such as myself? I know that I eat a cake, and I know that I might choke on a baby.
That's right, yeah.
And there are beads.
Yeah. So Mardi Gras is a holiday, I guess you would call it, a celebration.
That's what we call them in this country.
Started in France. The translation is literally Fat Tuesday. So you've heard of Fat Tuesday, right? And
Best
it
day
made
of
its
the
way
year.
to the U.S. It actually started in Mobile. People don't know that. Yeah, because people associate New Orleans with Mardi Gras. But for whatever reason, it got really big in New Orleans, I guess, with all the French culture there. Mm-hmm. And so it's like this big celebration on Tuesday before Ash Wednesday, where you just celebrate. I don't know when this started. I don't know if it started in the 1200s. And people would just celebrate during mead before they gave up mead for Lent. But yeah, you just celebrate. You eat a lot of food. You drink beer. You hang out with your family, with your friends.
So it's Catholic.
Mardi
Mardi Gras is a Catholic celebration.
Yes. Now it's turned into its own thing for sure. People aren't necessarily celebrating the Catholic aspect of it, but yeah, now it's turned into a whole season too. So it's
Mardi Gras season.
Yeah. So I don't know if I think it officially kicks off. Don't quote me on this. Around the Epiphany. So it's it picks up late January, February into Ash Wednesday usually. I'm sure it kind of depends if it's a late Ash Wednesday. It'll go from there. But it's into this thing where people just tailgate in the middle of the street, on sidewalks and on the medians of streets in New Orleans. And you just tailgate, you cook a ton of food, giant pots of jambalaya, and whatever else you're making, a ton of beer, and everyone just gathers and watches the floats come by. So it's this big party.
That's fun.
Which is really fun.
That's so fun.
And there's another side of it. I think when your average non-Louisianian thinks of Mardi Gras, just thinks of Bourbon Street, which I'm sure does its own thing. But really outside of Bourbon Street, it's the whole city, and it's, for the most part, during the day, it's extremely family-friendly, right? There's kids running around, people are throwing beads. It's not at all what you think of from what maybe you've read online or movies you've seen. It's extremely family-friendly, just the tailgate, and then they have floats coming down. And then there's different parades. Oh. And it's there's so much lore into this thing. And each day, especially the week before Mardi Gras, like leading up to it is like a different one. So I to all of our Louisiana listeners, I'm not from Louisiana, so I might be butchering some of this, but I think one of them is like Rex is on Tuesdays.
Rex.
I think. Maybe. It might not be Rex, but whatever the last one is on Tuesday is supposed to be like the big money one. And that's like old money. You have to be from New Orleans. Like maybe the Mannings are part of it, and they're like Louisiana royalty, you know? And there's, each of them have like their thing. There's a crew is what they're called. Each of them has a crew, and each crew picks a king and a queen and a princess and all the dukes and all these things, and they all have balls. So you throw a huge ball in January, and it's like that crew's Mardi Gras ball.
I need like a roadmap. Like
it's crazy.
Flow
It's
chart
super
of
fun.
Mardi Gras in Louisiana.
The funniest thing is Saturday. Now, especially for me in college as a non-Louisianan before I lived here, is Saturdays is like the one that most out-of-towners go to. There's like a lot of debate about how it's actually a lot more fun Mondays and Tuesdays when all the non-locals leave. But the big one that night is Endymion, is what it's called.
Endymion.
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 I used to say Endymion until I got roasted by my now wife. Endymion. And it's always funny because a lot of these ones bringing like famous people as like their king or just like as someone.
Was it Shaq? The king this year?
Shaq, I think has been. Yeah, he was for another big one.
Yep.
Like
Bacchus.
there's a big one. Yeah, Bacchus.
He was the king of Bacchus.
Yeah, Bacchus. And so they'll do a lot of times famous people. So I think Will Ferrell was it like a couple of years ago. Just like random people. You're like, how did you get headed to
That's
it?
so funny.
But for the Saturday, I just remember I thought it was the funniest thing. It was my first time going, and there's all these floats coming by, and these are giant things, right? And there's people at the top in these grand designs, and I see one in the distance with like laser, like lights with like what sounded like EDM, you know. And as it's getting closer and closer, I look up, and sure enough, it's Flo Rida. This is like 10 years past his prime.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, what is he doing? So it's super fun. It can be funny, the people that you run into, you know. But
Well, tell us about the what was that Mardi Gras that I almost went to? The weird Mardi Gras. Our friend Matt went to it. You dress up.
yeah, so I'm not as familiar with this one.
Yeah.
But there's there's Lundi Gras. Like Lundi translates to Monday. And I don't know if that's what the whole thing is called, so please don't roast us. But I know it's big in like Lafayette and like
Yeah.
that whole area.
It's kind of like an old school.
They call it like
Mardi Gras.
the traditional Mardi Gras, and people like make costumes. And the whole thing I think is like you make a costume like way back in the day, and you go around and you're begging for food. So I think it started with
You're like begging for the ingredients to make
food. Yeah.
Well, to make gumbo.
Is it the cake?
So now it's turned into this whole thing. Like I
Yeah.
don't really understand. And at
You have
some
to
point,
catch the
someone
chicken.
throws a chicken,
You have
and
to
then
go catch it.
There's these videos of like 60 college age dudes all dressed in funny outfits, like
Yeah.
very colorful, just like sprinting, like tackling each other, trying to jump on top of this chicken, and you catch it, and then you kill it and do whatever you do to it to get it ready for the gumbo. You know.
That's so
So
funny.
that's what the whole chasing the chicken is you're trying to catch it to put it in the gumbo?
I think so.
the whole thing was like you're trying to make the gumbo, and so you're on this float looking thing, and
Getting
you're
ingredients,
going
you're
to
on a
beg.
journey.
Yeah, you're
I
going
don't
to
think
beg.
you're on a float.
Well, not
I think you just
Not a-
walk
not
around
a
to people's
float.
houses.
I guess I've seen images of people. They're kind of like they're basically just like driving from house to house,
Yeah.
you know, because that's what we can do in the modern age. But anyways, they're going to find all the ingredients to make gumbo or whatever it is.
Yeah, so it's very different than New
Yeah.
Orleans. Like New Orleans is just like you watch a parade.
So clearly, Mardi Gras has a very close connection to the spirit of Lent.
Well, I think it did start that way.
Yeah. Well, tell us. So obviously, so Mardi Gras, like you said, the translation of that is Fat Tuesday, which is another name for the Tuesday before Ash Wednesday, which Ash Wednesday marks the beginning of Lent. So, John Michael, could you explain to us a little bit what is Lent? Why do we do it?
So we've done a couple episodes about just different liturgical seasons. We had a Christmas episode. We talked about Advent and the Christmas season. I think before we dive into Lent, I'll just kind of do a little refresh on liturgical seasons and why they're important. I think the church is so smart because the church knows that it's meant for humans. And so to speak human language and to speak in ways that we understand as people is what the church does. So the church speaks to us in seasons because there's seasons of our life, right? Jose recently had his first kid. That's a season of life. You're kind of acknowledging the fact that something just changed for this period of time. We're going to come out of this season at some point, and then it's football season, and then it's pumpkin spice latte season, and then it's Mardi Gras season. And so we live in this era where there are different seasonal aspects, and so we emphasize different things in those seasons. And so the church, because it's human, because it's speaking to humans, wants to communicate in the same way. And so we do liturgical seasons. And so we have these times of ordinary time, which are anything but ordinary. They're just times where we're walking with the life of Christ, typically through his public ministry. Through typically the readings that we're receiving at Sunday Mass are telling us just journeying through the life of Jesus. And then we have the season of Lent, which follows the season, the ordinary time, the shortest ordinary time season, which is the distance between the Christmas season and the Lenten season, where on Ash Wednesday we begin this new liturgical season. And so what it's trying to do is trying to remind us of the reality that there should be a time of penitential suffering in our lives, where we're emptying ourselves of things so that we can receive in a much greater way what God has for us. And so there's a time-bound aspect, but then there's also a deeper reality that Lent is teaching us about our whole lives, that our whole lives are a pilgrim journey where we should be removing things from our life to make more space for God when hopefully we live forever with him in heaven. And so Lent is this kind of short time where we can practice those habits so that one day we, like Jesus, will be resurrected. So 40 days typically, it's actually 40. When you do the math, it's like 47 actually. We say kind of colloquially that it's 40 because it makes us less scared of the commitment that we're about to make. But typically it begins with Ash Wednesday Mass. And so that kind of begins the liturgical season, which we were joking about this before we started the podcast, that people think that Ash Wednesday is like the most important Mass of the year. And I want to be clear, like, absolutely everyone should and needs to go to Mass on Ash Wednesday, but it's like the most full day of the year, especially on college campuses. Like when we were working on college campuses, it's like you would walk up to a dude and you'd be like, "Oh, dude, welcome to Mass. So happy to have you. Like, you've been here before." And he's like, "No, never. I'm a senior. This is my first time here, but I decided to show up for Ash Wednesday because I want to get ashes on my forehead, take a picture, and post it to my reel." So I don't fully understand that. But there's something maybe cultural like Mardi Gras that people, Catholic or not, there's a sort of meaning behind Ash Wednesday.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's just like there's something different that happens at Ash Wednesday Mass, and for whatever reason, people want to get ashes on their forehead, which honestly are sometimes kind of annoying. Do you guys ever get them like in your eyelashes, and then they get stuck? Does that ever happen to you? You like rub your head, and then they trickle down there in your eyelashes, and your eyes start. No, never.
My forehead is so big that typically
they stay growing.
Yeah. Every day my forehead gets bigger and bigger as my hair gets shorter and shorter.
Yeah, I like fidget a lot, and a lot of times like one of the things I do is I push up my glasses, right? But I'm always like doing something, or like I'll just do this. I'll scratch my beard, or I'll wipe my forehead a lot, like just out of habit, no matter what. Mm-hmm. And so Ash Wednesday in particular is really difficult for me because without like thinking, I'll have rubbed my ashes off by like 9 a.m. And especially working in a Catholic company, I always feel so guilty because I'm like, gosh, like they're going to be wondering if I'm even going to Mass tonight.
Yeah,
totally.
But it's funny you say that. Whenever I was on campus, the priest that was serving there before I got there, his favorite thing was to pour ashes on people's head instead of on the forehead.
Pour them?
Not pour. He wasn't like pouring them, but he would like sprinkle them on people's head, like in their hair. Wow. Because it's a thing you can
during
do.
Mass?
Yeah, instead of on their forehead. Because and this priest was kind of funny in that way, and he was like, well, all these people are just coming so they can show off that they have ashes. And so in order to
I'm just gonna sprinkle their heads.
So that, like, I still want them to come to Mass, but I'm just gonna sprinkle it on their head instead of on their forehead. Which I always thought was funny.
We did when we were working in campus ministry on college campuses, like Ash Wednesday, our priest would always say is our Super Bowl, because we have all these people who are not normally engaging that are coming to Mass. And we did this thing where we're like, all right, how do we like get in touch with these people? Like we're going to have, 2,000, 3,000 college kids coming. So I created this idea where we called up Chipotle and we bought ahead of time 3,000 burritos, Chipotle burritos. But I got like a code.
Did you get the points for that?
I unfortunately did not. I had to put it on the company card. But we did this thing with Chipotle where basically they got a code, and that code would then give them a free burrito. And so the campus ministry bought 3,000 burritos, and then at Ash Wednesday, we put a QR code in every single seat in the chapel. And it was, hey, if you give us your phone number, if you give us your information, and tell us if you'd be interested in something here at the Catholic Church, you get a free burrito. And the next day, I went to the Chipotle on campus. The line was around the corner.
That's amazing.
It was insane. And so we literally gave out 3,000 Chipotle burritos to all the kids that came to Ash Wednesday Mass.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Ended up meeting a ton of new people. The football guys were there. One football guy, he was probably an O lineman, pretty big guy, came up and he goes, I just want to let you know I scanned 6 QR codes. He's like, I got 6 free burritos. I'm so sorry. And then he just walked out of Mass, never saw him again. So it's Ash Wednesday is a great time to look out, especially at Mass, whether it's at the parish, whether it's at campus ministry, for people that maybe normally would not come to celebrate the Eucharist.
And welcome them into the church.
100%.
So, John Michael, you talked about the Lenten season being, a time of a penitential season, giving some things up, not eating meat on Friday. But I think, the important piece to note there is that you're not just giving things up for the sake of giving things up. You're not just eliminating things and then not filling that space with anything else. The purpose of a fast, the purpose of a removal of potentially excess things in our life, or even things that we need. We forego on Ash Wednesday. What is it? One large meal and 2 smaller meals that don't equal the size of the one large meal. There's a lot of math involved there, but essentially you're eating less on Ash Wednesday than you would on other days. And so there's a forego of even things that are good. And the purpose for that, like you were saying, is to create space for God. So it would be one thing to say, I'm not going to eat lunch. And during the time that I'd normally eat lunch, I'm gonna play Call of Duty. It's like in that time that I would eat lunch, I'm gonna experience that hunger, and then I'm gonna go and I'm gonna pray and I'm gonna ask God to come into this space in my heart. And so that leads me to my next question, which is, what are some of the best and worst Lenten fasts? And we're gonna answer that question after we come back right after this.
Hey, this is Clayton from the All In Podcast. What if I told you that God was moving in places that you've never even imagined? That's exactly what you'll see in the new series Where Love Leads, a 5-episode miniseries brought to you by Focus. Travel with us across the world to see people whose lives have been transformed by Christ and see the power of mission come alive. Tap the link or scan the QR code to watch Where Love Leads now in the Seek Replay app.
All right, fellas, so there's probably good Lenten fasts, and there's probably a few Lenten fasts that maybe aren't so great. I'd love to hear from you guys. Let's start. What are some of maybe the worst Lenten fasts that you've heard of? Just the funniest where you're like, well, I don't really think that fits the bill. Or maybe something you've done yourself.
I think the first thing that comes to mind, and I want to clarify, I'm glad you're giving this thing up. But Lent isn't a time where you give up mortal sin. You should do that regardless. It was always a little endearing because it usually comes from someone that's kind of newer to the faith and is just trying to figure things out, right? Where like, hey, for Lent, I'm going to give up this like really serious thing. I'm like, hey, that's awesome. Absolutely. Let's just give that up regardless, right? And it's like, maybe let's think of something else, and we'll still work on that. But let's think of something else. I always just thought that was so funny.
I'm not gonna name the situation, but that nailed it.
Yeah.
Because I've worked with some guys that have said stuff like that. I was gonna say, kind of on that same point, worst fast I've ever heard was one of my students came up to me and he said, Joe Michael, been praying about this a lot and feel just super convicted that I should give up drinking alcohol underage. I was like, oh, that's great. Like, that's such a great thing to do. That's a great sacrifice to make, till you turn 21. And then he goes, yeah, I'm like really excited. My 21st birthday is in a week and a half. I was like, you're just giving it up for 10 days? And he's like, yeah, I'm giving up drinking underage till my birthday for Lent. So I was like,
your birthday's a week at the way.
It's like the following Tuesday. So I think my funniest one personally is, I think when you start following God, you kind of go hard at first in areas that you probably don't need to. So it's like, instead of praying 30 minutes in the chapel, I'm going to pray 5 rosaries. That could just be a good example of like this kind of idealistic zeal that's really good in and of itself, but maybe it's just directed in the wrong direction. So my sophomore year of college, I was still struggling with a lot of sins in my life. But instead of spending Lent maybe increasing my prayer life or increasing my ability to run away from sin, I decided to give up meat entirely. So it just was funny looking back on, because in a time of my life where I should have been focused on spending less time on YouTube, spending less time in, some significant sin, spending less time with, maybe perhaps drinking or things like that, the only logical conclusion was, I'm only going to eat peanut butter tortillas for the next 45 days.
That's going to do the trick.
I think there's a lesson there of make your fast something that actually increases your virtue and doesn't take away from your ability to follow God.
Mm-hmm. One of the funnier ones that I've come across on is, I remember I was talking to a guy, and, I don't like to just be like, hey, this is what I'm giving up for Lent. What about you? Maybe I used to when I was in college, for sure.
That's
like,
such
I
a
definitely
guy.
wanted to like flex on people. Mm-hmm. But, later on I was like, okay, maybe I won't do that. Because I was the type of guy that would, hey, this Lent, I'm going to give up 60 million things because I am crazy. Like, I'm so crazy. And obviously I would a weekend just give up on everything, right? But I just remember later on when I was on campus as a missionary, I was talking to the guys about Lent, and afterwards, one of the guys in Bible study stuck around, and we were talking. I was like, hey, what are you thinking for Lent? He's like, I've been praying about this a lot, and I've realized that I have a big vanity problem. So I was like, oh, well, yeah, you do. No, I'm not, no, I was like, oh, okay, that's great. Like, and so like, what does that mean for Lent? He's like, well, I think in order to help me not care as much about what I look like and how others perceive me, I'm going to give up showering for Lent.
No.
And I have this moment, I remember it as kind of like, do you guys ever watch Emperor's New Groove growing up? Or it was just in movies where you have like the little angel, the little demon pop up on your shoulder. Where I was like, on one side, I was like, I should probably tell him that that's not good. But the other side is like, I kind of want to see how this plays out. You know what I mean?
Totally.
I think I ended up telling him, like, hey, for sure, that's awesome. How is that going to affect those around you? This should, maybe a fast should be more of a private thing, not something that the moment you walk into a room, everyone can smell.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Jesus says when you fast, do it in such a way that other people around you don't know that you're doing that. And that is a great way to let everybody know, hey, I'm not showering for the next like, you smell awful. Yeah. It's like, yeah, but it's penitential.
Yeah.
I'm going to give, on the flip side, 3 what I would call best fasts.
Great.
Okay.
So my recommendations for best fast are a removal and an addition. So great fast, removal of social media distraction. I would codify that in, it could be YouTube, could be Instagram, could be Snapchat, could be Netflix, just some removal of some media distraction, and an insert of using that time for spiritual reading, using that time for scripture reading. Instead of looking at Instagram, download Hallow and go through their new, Lenten thing that they're doing, for example. That'd be a great use of time.
Do you guys remember, I don't know if y'all ever gave up social media in college, and I just didn't know what to do with my time. And so I would just start digging through Venmo and looking at people's transactions.
Yes.
But it's like, it's so true. Like, actually have a plan of filling it up with something good. Because if not, you're just going to start.
Going through Venmo and then also looking at the weather in just various cities. Like, I wonder what the temperature is in San Diego today.
Oh, I know this person that once lived in Washington State. Let me see what it's like up there right now.
Yeah, you fill it with something. And so let's go ahead and fill it with something positive. Number 2, make a commitment to add a faith-based activity with other people. So if you're someone that isn't a part of a small group, isn't a part of a Bible study, isn't a part of a scripture study, for Lent, make it a commitment to find one, to seek it out, and to join one. And then number 3, add in an additional either daily mass, confession time, or prayer time on top of what you do. So if you're someone that, let's just say you're hitting Sunday mass only, that's great. Just for Lent, add 1 or 2 daily masses. Maybe it's a 6:30 a.m., so it kind of gets you up earlier. If you're someone that goes to confession, once a year, hit confession twice during Lent. That's a great thing to add in. If you're someone that doesn't pray the rosary, I think St. Teresa of Avila said that praying the rosary for her was like biting off her own arm. I relate to that a lot. It's just really difficult for me. So add in, hey, I'm going to do 3 rosaries this week. And allow that to be an addition to your life rather than just subtracting away chocolates and sodas and media and video games and all these things.
Absolutely.
It's really great advice, John Michael. I think, if you haven't done any of those things before, I mean, it's hard enough just giving up meat on Fridays. I mean, I forget half the time, if you haven't done some of those things before, I mean, maybe you're totally addicted to social media, or you're scared to go back to confession, or you've never been to daily mass before, and it's just kind of a different environment for you, or you're giving something up. It's inevitable during Lent that we fail in some capacity. So I'd love to hear from both of you as well. What do we do in those situations where we've committed to something over the course of Lent, and we've fallen, or we've failed once, twice, 3 times? What do we do in those situations?
I'll start with what not to do.
Great.
My sophomore year of college, it was my first Lent as a Catholic with all of their sacraments.
Yeah.
And kind of as we alluded to earlier, right? We go really hard and we pick a lot of things. And I think at this point in my life, I was like maybe praying once a week for 30 minutes. So I was like, well, for Lent, I think it makes sense that I do a holy hour every day. And I'll do a rosary every night. And I'll go to daily mass at least 5 times a week. And I'll go to confession every week. And I'll read the whole Bible cover to cover. Sure enough, within a week, all of that fell apart. What I did then was like, well, it's too far gone. All right, it's too late to start a new fast. It's too late. I already signed the contract. There's no going back. I'm just going to do nothing for the rest of Lent. Which for me is someone that struggles with both laziness, but also, like stretching myself too thin in things that aren't helpful. Mm-hmm. That is just my natural tendency. And I have to be ready for that every Lent, right? And so what I've learned is, first off, when I'm picking a fast, is start simple. And actually consider, like, hey, God, what are you inviting me into this Lent? What's actually coming up around me? What is something that would be good? And if I fail, just understanding like, oh, I'm a human being and it's okay. Let me just revisit that. And if my thing for Lent was to go to daily mass every single day, and I'm realizing I'm not doing that, well, then let's just readjust. Mm-hmm. And I think that's been key for me in my young adult life, is being okay with readjusting. Still something good, still something that pushes me, but realizing that I think a little too highly of myself. And so I set these crazy expectations for fast. Mm-hmm. And instead of just pushing it away the moment I fail, just being okay with the fact that I'm a fallen human being and just readjusting to something else.
I think what I would say is always remembering that Lent isn't about you and your ability to be successful in a fast. Your Lent is actually about God. And so when I'm able to take my eyes off of myself, because oftentimes our fasts are so, they're more important to us than they are to our Lord. And our Lord is not sitting there with the checkbook looking at how many times did you fail in your fast. He's looking at you and saying, did your love for me, did your intimacy with me increase over these 40 days? If it did, that's a success. It's a rousing success. It's like the best Lent possible.
True.
If your love for me didn't increase, and your love for me became a series of actions to achieve this result, to where now I feel like I've gained the medal of holiness, when in reality I've just gained a sense of self-reliance, actually, right, and not a spirit of surrender to what our Lord may be inviting me into. And so that's a huge watch out, especially for men. Is the goal on Easter Sunday is not to sit there and say, did I have a successful Lent or did I have a failure of a Lent? The goal on Easter Sunday is to say, I am more excited this Easter Sunday that Jesus rose from the dead than I was last Easter Sunday. And next year and next year and next year and next year.
It's so true. And I think that can be really easy to forget, especially I think as guys, and especially when we were younger in college. A lot of our Lenten fasts revolve around, we don't say this, right? We try to hide it, but we always sneak in a fast that has to do with us losing weight. You know,
or just it's supposed to, like, I want this to be like a benefit to me.
Yeah,
you know, I want it to do something good for me. It's like it's more of like a New Year's resolution.
Yeah,
to benefit me rather than just like this desire to grow.
Absolutely. And I remember talking to a student once, and I was like, "Hey, it was like coming up Easter, right?" And I was like, "Hey, reflecting back on Lent, would you say it was like a good Lent?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm down 10 pounds." You know, and it's kind of to your point of like, that's the point is, are we growing more in love with God?
And I think this is a brilliant topic, because there's a gospel going on right now that is not the gospel message of Jesus, which is the gospel of self-help and the gospel of self-wellness. And so we cannot create a Lent that is about the gospel of self-help, which is about how do I be a better version of myself when Easter Sunday. It has to be a fast that's actually about the gospel of Christ, that says I'm a sinner in need of great mercy in my life, and how do I even said it myself, right? How do I even receive the mercy of God more deeply the next 47 days?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that's the last thing that I would want to add here is for the person that's making these commitments, and let's say your heart is pure. There's this desire to grow in closeness with God. There's this desire to have a more deep receiving of God's mercy, but you continue to fail. It's really only in fasting and giving something up that you recognize how addicted to things you actually are. It's like you try to give up social media, and then all of a sudden you're digging through your pocket all the time, and you're looking at Venmo, and you're like, oh my gosh, like I didn't even realize how often I reach for this thing, you know. Or when you're not eating meat on Friday, how often you're thinking about how you just want to have a burger and fries as you're going into the weekend, you know. Or you're giving up, alcohol for Lent, and you're thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how quickly I thought about having a beer on Saturday as I'm watching, college football. And it's in giving those things up where you start to recognize those attachments in a deeper way, you know.
When I gave up YouTube one time for Lent, couldn't poop for 3 weeks. What am I gonna?
So constipated.
What am I gonna do? What am I gonna do when I use the restroom?
Yeah. This fear within me, this anxiety about going into that dark room.
So instead of not using my phone when I'm on the toilet, I just refuse to use the restroom.
I remember one time similar of like I forget what, but it was like maybe it was like I'm just not gonna bring my phone into my room or into the bathroom. Right.
Slept on the couch.
A little life hack. No, I started bringing a book into the bathroom.
Yeah.
And so I was still spending 20 minutes in there, but instead of scrolling, I'm just like reading a book. I'm like 3 chapters in. I'm like, what am I doing? You know.
So maybe for our listeners back home, maybe one thing to give up this Lent would be YouTube while you're in the bathroom. And maybe one thing to add would be an episode of the All In Podcast every single day. This is the All In Podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment what you're giving up for Lent. We'll see you next time.